Welcome to my homicidal holiday special. My name is Franklin James, the serial author. And because it is the holidays, I thought I'd switch it up a bit and talk about some crazy cases that have taken place during the holiday season, right? And today I want to talk about one of the most haunting and infamous unsolved cases in American history. I'm talking about a 6-year-old beauty pageant winner from Boulder, Colorado. And I'm sure you've heard of this case. I'm talking about JonBenét Ramsey. Now, whether or not you're into true crime stories, I'm sure you're familiar with her tragic case and the mayhem left after her death. And on this episode of Homicidal Holidays, I'll examine JonBenét's case from several key aspects by identifying the family dynamic and behavioral analysis, the potential staging of the crime scene, profiling the perpetrator or perpetrators, the signs of abuse, and the psychological impact on investigators as well as the public's perception. Now let's get into it. Many experts have scrutinized the behaviors of JonBenét's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, throughout the entire investigation. And while they've never been charged, some theorists point to inconsistencies in their accounts and the unusually long, detailed ransom note found in their home as potential red flags. I mean, in one version of the story, JonBenét's mother, Patsy Ramsey, stated that she went to JonBenét's room first, noticed she was missing, and then found the ransom note. And then in a more repeated version, she stated that she found the note first, then went up to JonBenét's room and discovered that she was missing. And look, I'm sure there are a million reasons why she gave one version of the story and then another, right? I mean, her daughter's missing, she's likely hysterical and panicking and confused, you know? But at the same time, it's a little suspicious. Now, forensic psychologists often speculate whether the ransom note suggests premeditation or panic driven staging of the crime scene, to which I can see how it may have been staged because the pages were torn out of a notepad that belonged to JonBenét's parents. And I believe that particular notepad belonged to her mother, Patsy Ramsey. But I also discovered that the investigators found a page within that notepad that looked like a ransom note was about to be written, but the person stopped. So, yeah, it's a little suspicious. And different experts have debated whether the Ramsey family's public demeanor reflected genuine grief or concealed guilt. And it's hard to say because people process trauma differently. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the Ramsey family appeared to be too preoccupied with trying to prove their innocence than being upset about what happened to their daughter. In fact, there's an interview where they're talking about the ransom note and how they couldn't have written it based on a score that they received. And it almost feels like they're bragging about it.
John's definitively was cleared, and I scored a 4.5 out of 5. 5 is definitely no match.
See what I mean? It's a little unsettling. But like I said before, we all process trauma differently. We all see things subjectively. So, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Just a little suspicious. Now let's tackle the crime scene. I mentioned the ransom note before and how it had been analyzed as a possible element of staging. In fact, forensic linguists and psychologists have commented on the ransom note's unusual length and language, suggesting it may reflect someone trying to imitate a stereotypical kidnapper rather than a genuine abductor. And yeah, I can see that. I mean, the note's excessive length and dramatic language also points to someone who was overly familiar with the household. I mean, the note may also suggest a need for control in a chaotic and unforeseen predicament. And then there's JonBenét's body. She was found with a garrote, which was likely used to stage the crime as deliberate strangulation. The garrote was found around her neck, and she possessed cranial damage as well. Her skull was fractured with a blunt force instrument. And it's interesting because I believe whoever murdered her was sadistic, and the garrote is proof of that. Someone who might use a garrote enjoys the process of torturing their victim slowly. It's sadistic. They feel almost godlike. They can apply pressure and release it whenever they want. They're in control and have the power to let someone live or let them die. But the blow to her head is conflicting. Typically, with assaults like that, they're quick and direct, they're impulsive and more spontaneous than watching someone die slowly. Now, I'm not saying the same killer couldn't torture someone and then strike them dead because I've seen plenty of cases where that's taken place. All I'm saying is that the gratifying part for a sadistic killer is the torture and pain they're inflicting, and strangulation is often sexually motivated. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that she was being tortured first and then took a blow to the head, or someone snapped, cracked her skull, and used the garrote to try to cover up what really happened. Forensic psychologists believe the act of staging a crime scene means the perpetrator had a personal connection to the victim, and their goal is to throw off the investigation, to mislead the investigators. So perhaps the family was involved, or maybe there actually was an intruder. I mean, there are theories an outsider committed the crime, pointing to evidence like the broken basement window, the unidentified DNA on JonBenét's clothing, and the suitcase near the window. And I believe there was a footprint as well. I mean, there are theories that someone broke into their home and waited for the right opportunity to strike. And one might profile this perpetrator as opportunistic with possible sexual motives, though the evidence remains inconclusive. And I do want to note that intruders who target children often show high levels of planning, but they lack the ability to control the aftermath. Now, another thing I found interesting is how the detectives had John Ramsey walk the house once more after the phone call that was in the ransom note didn't take place. And I know it was the 90s, but I don't know why the police had him walk the house himself. I mean, up to that point, they didn't know she was dead, but they did know she was abducted. And the last time I checked, abduction is a crime. So essentially, that entire house is a crime scene. So I wouldn't want him walking around contaminating it. And why the fuck didn't the police walk around themselves? I mean, they're the ones doing the investigation. They should have found the broken window. They should have found the suitcase and they should have found JonBenét. What took place there just isn't what I'm used to seeing during an investigation. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe abductions are different. But one thing I can tell you, because of their lapse in judgment, he ends up finding his daughter and removing her, completely contaminating the crime scene. I can understand a frightened and scared parent finding their child unresponsive and wanting to remove all these harmful things on them, right? And then wanting to take that child upstairs to the police. But guess what? Now all that crucial evidence is compromised. Evidence they could have used to find the killer. I mean, in the end, the police should have walked that house from top to bottom themselves. On the flip side, maybe it was intentional, a massive cover up. I mean, who knows, right? There are theories of the family's involvement suggesting the crime occurred accidentally, suggesting that the crime occurred during a fit of anger or rough play, followed by a panic staging and cover up. In fact, psychologists often explore stress, jealousy, or dysfunctional family dynamics as contributing factors in such scenarios. Now, sadly, there were signs of a sexual assault as well. In fact, evidence of prior and possible acute sexual trauma has led some forensic psychologists to consider whether or not JonBenét was being abused over time. And from what I've gathered, she may have been. And I say that because JonBenét had a bedwetting issue, an issue that caused a lot of hostility within her household. And if there's one thing I do know about continued bedwetting, it's that as kids get older and older, it's often attributed to some form of abuse. It represents a state of regression. So it's possible that JonBenét did experience some form of abuse, whether it be physical or emotional. In a lot of cases, I've seen where parents tend to project their unmet need for validation and achievements onto their children because they feel as though when they were young, they never received love and support from their parents. Patsy Ramsey was in a pageant herself when she was young, and I wonder if she was trying to live vicariously through her own daughter. And I know from what I've read, JonBenét was interested in the whole pageant stuff herself, but I wonder how much pressure was placed on her by her mother. And whenever JonBenét didn't do what she was told or stepped out of line, she was quickly put in her place. And I question whether the last go around something went wrong, leading to her death. Again, who knows what really happened, right? I mean, we weren't there. All we can do is speculate. But I do think the media's coverage of the case has definitely influenced the public's opinion. But I question whether or not the media coverage, coupled with the release of case details, led to widespread biases, making it difficult to conduct a fair investigation or trial. But in the end, I think the presence of conflicting evidence, along with the contaminated crime scene, hindered their ability to reach a clear resolution. Now, John Benet's case remains open, allowing future forensic advancements to provide answers, and I hope we get them soon and justice is served because she was vibrant and full of life. And while psychological theories and profiles do provide insight, they'll never truly capture the pain of a life lost too soon. But I do want to thank you guys for tuning into my Homicidal Holiday special. And I do ask that you stab that like button and subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what you guys think. Share this video out there, crack that bell for notifications, and if possible, happy holidays.